This is the Retirement Solution Podcast with financial advisor John Hicks, founder of J. Hagan Capital.
And we're glad to have you here spending some of your day with John Hicks, financial advisor, founder of J. Hagan Capital, on the Retirement Solution, working to help you understand your money. That's what I'm embarrassed to admit about myself. I'll go ahead and put myself on the blessed. Until you and I started having conversations like this, I mean, my whole life, my dad went to Wharton. He is a commercial real estate guy. He is just always taught me about saving money. And so my first job out of college, I was getting paid $19,000 a year for my first little radio job in Huntsville, Alabama.
Right.
And by God, did I start saving to my 401k. And I have always saved to whatever retirement investment every employer's ever given to me. But hand to the heavens, I didn't really know what a 401k was. I mean, I'm saving to it because I'm supposed to, but I don't really know what it is.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's amazing how we can have as much power as we do to select all these things.
Yeah.
But most of us, we have never had a class. You know, I have to think back. So I have 3 master's degrees, most of them in finance or mathematics or accounting or things like that. At no point in all of those years of school did anyone ever show me what a 401k prospectus looked like. The very first time that I saw one at my very first job, I'm like,
employer?
I was aware of what it was saying.
Yeah.
But I'm like, well, how much can I put into that? What is that? What if I don't want that? What if it was crazy to me. But there was no education. As a matter of fact, the human resources person said, yeah, here's this, give it back, fill it out, give it back to us by the end of the day today.
Right.
The craziest thing is I had that job for a little over 2 years, and at no other point, unless I went to go tell them, did that ever change. The exact same thing I did that very first day, frankly, not having a clue what I filled out, was the same way it was for 2 years. And I have talked to people over the past 20 years that said, yeah, John, I did that 24 years ago, dude. And 24 years ago, whatever I put on that piece of paper is exactly the way it was.
Yep.
And for many of us, depending on as long as we didn't have too much risk, it was kind of a good thing because we didn't think about it as much.
That's right.
It just did its own thing.
Yeah.
And as long as our risk tolerance was somewhere in a norm, then probably we did okay, especially over the previous 25 years. Right. Now, there were other periods of 25 years that may not have been as rosy, but at least over the past 25 years, people are just like, maybe I lucked out, but here we are, right? Yeah. But that's how a lot of it is. So we just don't know. You don't know until you know.
Thinking about that perspective of our investments and our setups, there are also, in the meantime, a lot of people who are very proactive, who are very aware. They know what they're doing. They've got a plan. They've got a goal. They know where they're headed towards. And when they get there, they want to make sure that they continue to head down that path that they have planned to be on, thinking about early retirement for folks that have done well. Maybe you've been a successful small business owner and you're realizing at the age of 50, you can sell your business for $15-20 million. And
we're seeing that happen all the time right now. Private equity companies are salivating. They are hungry to find well-run companies that they can give what they call a multiple, where if you make $2 million a year, they may give you an 8-time multiple. 8 times 2 is $16 million. They could write you a check for $16 million for your carpentry company, your kitchen cabinet company, your plumbing company. And I'm seeing it every single week, Heather, not just in the Louisville area, but all over the United States where we have clients. And it's mind-numbing because these folks are going, John, I'm only 51 years old. I'm only 55 years old. Does this make sense? And I'm like, it depends on what you're going to do next, right? It's not what you retire from.
It's what you retire to.
It's what you're retiring to. Do you know what you would do next? And a lot of people are like, well,
they've been spending their whole time working.
That's it.
That's it. To figure it out. Yeah.
That's the whole thing. So a lot of those things are things we want to think through. But if you can have an early retirement, I don't know. I kind of think that that's not a bad thing.
Okay.
You get to reinvent what you want your next future to look like, right?
And if you are somebody has the self-starter internally that started a small business at the age of 50, you have $15 million. Gosh, I mean, the sky's the limit for opportunities. But we have had plenty of conversations also about longevity factors in our retirement. If you retire early and you live to 90, I mean, you basically are doubling down on the adult life you're living as far as what you now have to support yourself through, because the employment's not going to be there if you don't employ again. So what I wanted to ask you about is the idea of early retirement risks. A huge proponent of retiring early is personal finance radio host Dave Ramsey. We've talked about him before. He's got some good perspective, some perspective you have disagreed with before, John. But I think you're going to understand and agree with some of his points here. He says, be realistic about your retirement goals. Create an accurate mock budget for yourself, covering all of your monthly expenses. Also save for an emergency fund to pay off your debts, pay off your entire mortgage. That's one that I think maybe you might wonder about there. Sure. So asking your perspective then, thinking about a checklist for somebody that has a goal to retire early, what do you want people to think about?
Yeah, so there are three major things we all kind of have to be aware of, right?
Okay.
So number one, if you retire earlier, then either you may not be getting Social Security yet, right? So the earliest we can take Social Security is 62. Well, if you get a buyout from your company, great, you're going to have that money coming in. But let's say you retire when you're 55, you may not have any other income from Social Security or pensions or anything like that for several more years.
Yeah.
So number one, it may be a while before you get that payment. Number two, of course, if we take Social Security earlier, it's going to be a smaller amount of money.
Right.
Okay. So that's one thing to consider. Now, having said that, I do the math on this in the office. My staff does the math on this every single week in my office. The average American, if you retire at age 62, your break even is roughly age 78 to 79, which means if you retire at age 62 and start taking your Social Security, you will have more money in your pocket all the way until, let's say, roughly age 78.
Okay.
Then, if you live longer than age 78, you would have had more money in your pocket for waiting. So the question is, would you rather have more money in your pocket when you're younger, healthier, and more able to use it, or would you rather have basically bank that savings so that you have more savings in the end of your life? Now, I don't know what anyone else thinks, but for me, frankly, I'd rather have that money a little bit earlier in life, right?
Right.
Now, there's a couple other caveats when it comes to that. Taxation's a big one, right? Because there are a lot of planning techniques you can use to avoid a lot of taxes on Social Security, or at least not be paying extra taxes because of Social Security. So that's one thing you're going to want to talk to your CPA about, or your accountant, or call one of my team members. That's what our staff is really good at, to help you figure that out. But that's number one. When should you get your Social Security?
Okay.
Number two, if you retire earlier, your savings are going to have to last a little bit longer, right? So if you retire when you're 60 and you live to be 90, you're going to have to live off your savings for roughly 30 years. Now, if you think about that, if you started working when you were, let's say, 20, that means you only worked for 40 years and you're going to live for 30 after that. So what you did in those first 40 years are going to have to support the next 30, and that's just one individual, right? So often, if you're married, someone else, your spouse, could last for even longer than that.
That's right.
The average female lasts for many years after a male passes away. It's just how it works. So we have to also understand, what if you married someone younger and they last longer? So that means that we may actually see 40 years of a working life having to support 40 years of retirement income, okay? So it's just something else to consider. It doesn't mean don't do it. It shouldn't be daunting. You're just going to want to know your math, and that's where I do 100% agree with Dave Ramsey. You have to have a workable budget.
Yeah.
It can't be, hey, well, I kind of guesstimate that it's going to be roughly $32, a year for what I... No. You can't do that. The easiest way to do it, look at your last 6 months of bank statements and your credit cards. How much did you spend?
It's so easy now because everything is digitized. Like, just print your statement and just start highlighting. You'll see it.
Bingo. Because however you're currently living, that's what we want to sustain.
That's right.
We don't want to say, hey, John, I can live off half of this and then just hate your life, because you're only living off half of what you've been used to, right? So whatever you're currently spending, let's say that's $6,000 a month. Well, then we know we need to have $6,000 a month coming in after taxes, right? So we got to factor that in there. What tax bracket are we going to be in? These other things, property taxes, things like that all come into consideration. So it's very important to know the budget, because income is the ultimate outcome in retirement.
Right.
If you can live off $3,000 a month in retirement and your pension is $10,000 a month, you can retire with not $1 in your bank account potentially, right? Because you only have $3,000 you need to spend out. You got $10,000 a month coming in. So that's important. Income is the outcome. So as long as we know our budget, we can stick within it.
Okay.
And the last of the three big ones is, if you're going to retire before 65, you're going to have to really consider healthcare costs.
Yeah.
Right? That's a big one. And it happens to all of us. There's not much we can do about it. Unfortunately, I don't think that there's too much that our government in any capacity can do do to reduce too much the cost of health insurance.
Okay.
Because we are living longer. And frankly, we want to live healthier, right, than previous generations. So that means more medications, more whatever. It's just how it goes, right? But we have to understand before we get to 65, it can be pretty expensive. So for the average bear, you're talking $1,000 to $1,500 a month is what we typically see to have a decent plan. So if you're going to retire 5 years early and your spouse is going to do that with you, that means that you're going to need to have $1,000 to $1,500 per person per month for those 5 years. So you're going to have to factor that into your plan. I wouldn't roll the dice on that one and not go with the health insurance, right? And many people, if you're a veteran, if you have other situations, you can potentially get better healthcare options or cheaper options.
Okay.
But those are the three big ones, right? Those are three things that people go, John, I don't know that I can handle that, or I don't know if I can swing that, or that doesn't, I'm not sure. That's what you just need to sit down with a skilled fiduciary that does this all the time. You know, one of the things that I can probably say without any concern is that, you know, for a lot of us out there, this may be our very first retirement. First time we're going through this is our first rodeo.
Yeah.
Right. And for our staff, for our team, we have a little over 90 years of collective experience on literally only helping people get through retirement. Not just to it, but through it. So we've seen all these types of things because it's what we do on a daily basis. So even if you just want to bounce an idea off or get a second opinion, it's really helpful to be able to run by with one of our retirement planners just to say, hey, yes, you can absolutely retire 2 years earlier. Here's the trade-offs. Here's the caveat. If you're comfortable with that, you can put in your 2 weeks tomorrow. But if we want to wait and just say 3 months, here's the enhancement you can have, or here's what you can look forward to. And people love that idea. They still have the power, but they're making sure they're making a proper decision.
You've gotten to this point. Do you have a plan that's going to get you through your retirement years, particularly if you want to retire early? If you have that as an option opportunity, kudos to you. But let's make sure that your money is going to sustain the life that you intend to live in your retirement. RetirementSolutionShow.com is where to get started on this conversation with John and his team at J. Hagan Capital. You can click on the links we've got posted in the show notes as well. Or again, it's RetirementSolutionShow.com.
Thanks for listening to the Retirement Solution Podcast with John Hicks. Begin the conversation about your savings plan with John and the team at J. Hagan Capital by visiting RetirementSolutionRadio.com. Be sure to listen to John's radio show, The Retirement Solution, Saturdays at 8 a.m. and Sundays at 9 a.m. on News Radio 840 WHAS.
J. Hagan Capital Incorporated is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if J. Hagan Capital Incorporated is licensed in your state, please call 502-690-5635. J. Hagan Capital Incorporated is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency and does not provide legal or tax advice. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through J. Hagan Capital, LLC, NPN number 188279094.